Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside Father Joe Grimaldi, and welcome to the Father Joe Podcast. The Father Joe Podcast is proudly supported by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield. The spring savings sales event is going on now at Star Lincoln, and that means additional savings on every Lincoln in stock. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, they treasure your time. Experience the Star treatment. Whether you crave a new Lincoln MKC, Lincoln MKX, the classic Lincoln Navigator, or the awesome Lincoln Nautilus, give them a call, drop on by, and you'll see why they've been in business for decades. In a hurry, shop online, starlincoln.com. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star treatment. I just said something to you, and you said you hadn't noticed it. I was reading online, so it must be true. I heard that the cassock is coming back into style for the priests.
I do know this.
Yeah.
That there's always a group of people in the church that would be considered, and I hate to use labels, but super conservative. And what they mean by conservative very often, not always. See, conservative is not a bad word. Conservative simply means preserving what you know and what you have is good and so on. However, if it's something that holds you back from making progress, I don't know. But there are always a group of people that want the church to go back to 1940, okay, if you want.
Right.
Around that time when things were in Latin, when the priest always wore the biretta.
Yeah.
And always wore the cassock with the little cape.
Yes.
Where there was much more of a mysterious religious surrounding to things, as opposed to the laicization, if you want, of the church, where the lay people are much more included now than they were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so, very often when you wear the cassock, when you wear the collar, when you wear all of these things, they call that clericalism. And clericalism is basically something that, we realize that it relates to whatever the clerics do and have, but it also relates to something that's not so great when priests and bishops, they really lorded over the people. And they treated the people as less than others. And so that it has a connotation sometimes when you speak about clericalism, because it's the idea that, well, I'm the priest. I can do no wrong. You follow what I say, and so on and so forth.
I see that. Now,
it's not not every person who wears the cassock is like that, and I don't mean to say that. However, it indicates that in some ways.
I remember when I was an altar boy, and this goes back, 55 years ago. I remember not all, but a couple of the priests would wear the biretta onto the altar, I believe.
Sure.
And then would take it off. It had like 3 corners to it.
Exactly.
And he would take it off, hand it to me, and I believe that we would put that on his chair.
Right.
There would be like 3 or 4 chairs. I think 3 chairs. One for the priest, and then 2, one for each altar boy. And you would put the biretta on his chair. For some reason, that seems to be my recollection of how it worked. Maybe not. No, but I remember the biretta and the cape. He would walk from the rectory to the church, and that would be the outfit, a cassock, usually a cape, along with the biretta. Right. Or if extremely cold, of course, a heavy top coat. But that would also be a cape.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're right. Yeah. And I always think of the bells of St. Mary, and of course,
you don't see that today.
No, that's gone. But occasionally, a priest will actually wear the biretta, right? Maybe more so in Rome.
Oh yeah, more so in Rome.
Yeah.
It's rare that you see that here, anyway.
Okay. That could be a nice topic for us to cover then. Let's talk about the clericals, the outfits, the robes, the Roman collar.
Sure.
I just saw this. I did this very well, by the way. While you were talking, I was actually looking and listening at the same time, I swear.
Well, you multitask
I
well.
Thank you very much. The symbolism of the cassock is as follows. The Roman collar symbolizes obedience. I did not know that.
Oh, yes. It's a choker.
Goes on to talk about the choker. The sash or the cincture around that waist, chastity, there you go. And the color black, poverty. All right. Moreover, black is a color of mourning, arid death for the priest. The symbolism is dying to oneself to rise and serve the Lord as well as giving witness of the kingdom yet to come. Seem to all make sense to you?
You know, the names that we give to that, the different types of garments that the priest wears, I mean, that still holds true. We grew up with, and so we know that the chastity is symbolized by the sash, if you want, or the cincture, it's called for the church. And then, of course, the collar is obedience. And the black has different connotations. You've mentioned a number of them already. But, you know, very often, a lot of the garments that priests or religious wear, for example, you look at the nuns, they had all these different habits, different kinds of
They certainly did.
Well, what they did is, when their foundresses lived, that's the kind of clothes that they wore in those days. And so they just stayed with the same model of clothes. And so they all wore the same kind of thing. It's kind of interesting because even with the brothers, the Christian brothers, the use of the last name is symbolic as well. Because in Ireland, during persecution, the brothers took a religious name that was used only within the house. But then, outside of the house, they would be known as Mr. Calvert. And out of respect for that tradition, the brother general of the order is still referred to as the Very Reverend Mr. Calvert, or whatever the name might be. So the thing is this, there's a lot of things that have symbols attached to them. It's interesting you bring up that topic. I think you were headed more towards the clothes that are worn during Mass, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I want to get to the vestments in a moment, but let me follow up with this. The Roman collar, very unique, yet a lot of variations in other churches seem to either like it or have taken to it. And I don't know why I want to claim ownership of the dark collar with the little white square. That's the Roman Catholic look.
Correct.
Do you know the genesis of that?
No, I don't. But let me put it this way. When you look at the other religions, they were not required to wear any of those things. But I think with time, some of them have adopted those articles of clothing so that basically, for example, today, if you speak to the Protestant minister of whatever church you want, whether they're Anglicans or other Protestant groups, many of them do wear the Roman collar.
The Episcopals, so red for
even
the most
women
part.
do.
Yes.
The red is the vestment, but the collar is always white, usually.
Right, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
But we don't know the actual meaning. That will require that we both go back and find that.
Well, the meaning is the same.
No, I know the meaning, but where did it start? Because I know, I'm looking at it right now, there's been an evolution of the collar, going back to just because of the various types of weather and, of course, the clothing of that era. It seems to me the Roman Catholic collar that I'm thinking of, that you're wearing, has been around for as long as I've been alive. It certainly has.
Definitely. No.
Right.
And it's interesting because, as you say, it evolves, the meaning or the shape of it also evolved. With the Christian brothers, they wore a collar.
Very close. I thought.
The thing is this, though, if you look closely, it's not the same as the priest collar. It's much narrower, and it describes how many millimeters it's going to be, if you want, as opposed to what the priest would wear, so that you could always tell the difference. Most people don't know the difference.
No, they don't.
But there is a difference in the size of it. Why? Well, they were brothers. They're not clerics. They're brothers. And yet, they're lay people. lay people with vows,
Yes.
but they're not clerics. They're not ordained.
If you're in the airport and you see an Irish Christian brother wearing what you were wearing back when I was in high school,
Sure.
you more than likely would say, "Hello, Father."
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got that all the time.
It must have happened all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so quick question on that, then we'll move into the vestments. So it's a simpler look now. We don't see the priest walking around in a cassock and a cincture, and we certainly don't see the biretta or the cape or any of that. But we still see the Roman Catholic collar, that being the small white within the black collar.
Sure.
However, sometimes you see a solid white all the way around.
Right.
Is that still Catholic?
There's no rules of what you want to wear.
Okay.
There may have been at one time, but if a priest decides to wear the full white, like many of the Episcopals do,
Okay.
that's fine. Or
Right.
if they want to wear the black with just a little point. Yeah,
I'm not trying to do a fashion show. I'm just, for some reason, I'm fascinated by this. But also, you on occasion will see the gray shirt.
Oh, you can wear whatever you want.
Okay.
No.
No, I'm talking about the gray shirt with
Yeah.
the collar.
Or the blue shirt, or the red shirt.
Oh, all right. Well,
If you were to go to a clerical store, they have all the different colors.
uh-huh.
Now, ordinarily, the priest will wear the black. If he tries to be a little adventuresome, he'll go to the gray.
Uh-huh.
If he's a wild man,
Yeah.
he might wear blue.
Ooh.
So it's like,
I
I
see.
don't think there's any rule on that.
Uh-huh.
It's just a clerical shirt. And symbolic of that is the collar, basically. So that stays steady, while the color of the shirt might vary. However, predominant is black.
Yeah. Now, okay, getting into the vestments.
Sure. Let's talk about right after the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, people were fascinated by the events that took place.
Rightfully
And
so.
so they got together, those who were believers, and non-believers too at times, would gather together in small groups over the tombs of what they thought were holy people, the martyrs primarily. And there they would pray. And they would pray using the words that are very similar, and not only similar, they try to imitate the words that Christ used at the Last Supper. Take this is my body. So they would commemorate the Lord's resurrection by using those words, using ordinary bread, distributing the bread to others. But this was not, how should I put it, it was not refined. It was not something that was so outlined in such a way that you can only do this and not that. It was a gathering of ordinary folks wanting to pay respect at the tomb of the holy ones. And they would pray what Jesus prayed at the Last Supper. They would share the bread because this is what Jesus said to do. You're going to share this, do this in memory of me. And they would share the wine. And so there were no rules on fasting. You know, you're supposed to not do anything beforehand and afterwards and so on. And I don't know how much time passed between the very beginnings of that custom to when things started to become much more formalized. Maybe a century, I don't know, 2 maybe. But basically things then became more refined. And as things became refined, the liturgy became more definite, more outlined, so that everybody would know what you're supposed to do when you gather for the commemoration of Christ. And it probably had different names. But the liturgical action was, well, okay, we're going to listen to Scripture. There's going to be this priest who's going to pray over the bread, over the wine, consecrate it, and then a distribution so that everybody could share. So what caused people to change customs about what to wear? And I think what happened was they started to see that maybe with the blood of the martyrs, maybe we should try to emphasize the color red because it's the imitation of the blood. And I don't know if all of the colors started at the same time, but it seems to me, and I'm no expert at this, please, but by the same token, it seems to me that maybe different times, different things developed. And then joyous feast days, we should be wearing white or gold, because this is a time to celebrate, particularly when we speak about Christmas and Easter. So in the beginnings of the liturgical world of the church, there were just two main feasts that were celebrated, and they were Christmas and Easter. Easter, of course, because it was the salvation of mankind, and then Christmas because it was the incarnation of Christ becoming a man, God becoming man, if you want, so that he was both God and man at the same time. So those two seasons were so powerful that they had more than just one day to celebrate. Attached to the Easter season is the Lenten season. And so the Lenten season, you have the wearing of purple, which means people were getting ready. It's a time to do some fasting, preparation for the celebration of Easter. So purple seemed to be, violet, whatever you want to call it, seemed to be a way of celebrating Lent. And then, of course, there was, as you got close to Easter, you had Laetare Sunday.
That's right. Break out the rose. Break out the rose.
Yeah, and then, of course, with Christmas, a similar thing. You have Christmas, and then what follows Christmas, the Christmas season, right up to the baptism of the Lord. But you also have Advent. And then again, towards the end of Advent, you have Gaudete Sunday, wearing the rose again. And so, if they want to, but now that's kind of fallen off the chart. What were those symbolic of? These things develop because of what happens, okay? So, everything beyond those two major parts of the liturgy, the Easter and the Christmas liturgies, everything beyond that was considered ordinary time. But ordinary is not a great word, because every time you go to Mass, you're celebrating the Eucharist, which is a miracle in itself. It should not be ordinary, because it is extraordinary that the Lord picks out the most vulnerable way of making himself available to all peoples. So in any case, all of that is ordinary. Now, why green? I don't know. Green seems to be a color that symbolizes, in my mind, peaceful way of looking at things and so on. It's easy on the eyes and all of this. Ordinary time is also interrupted at times whenever there is a major feast. Matter of fact, even Easter, the Lenten season, is usually interrupted twice because of solemnities. The Feast of St. Joseph, what we call the Father of Jesus, the foster father of Jesus. And then you have the Annunciation, usually the 25th of March, is usually right in the middle of Lent, okay? Basically, those are days when you interrupt the severity of the Lenten season with solemnities, and therefore we turn to white or gold on those 2 days. I think how those things evolved exactly, and the dates exactly, I don't know. However, those are the things that caused it.
You know, the actual appearance of the vestments, I assume, would go back to about maybe the mid-400s. That was certainly the look at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe some sort of replication of how, in picture or interpretation, that appears to be more of the look, some sort of a wrap, a cover over some sort of a cassock, if you will.
The alb.
Yes.
The word alb means white, and so that's always white. The chasuble, which comes from the Latin word casula, which is basically, it really means a house, but it covers everything.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. The cincture you already talked about was
right.
The idea of chastity, as you tie your alb with the cincture. The maniple, manus meaning hands, but the maniple used at the old days, not anymore, to, as you wash your hands, you would wipe them with the maniple. But now they give you a separate.
That.
Yeah. And then the amice covers everything that's shown when you put your alb on. In any case, I don't know how they evolved, but they did evolve, like you say. at different times in the past. They evolved for a reason. So it's not just somebody making things up.
Yeah, right.
There was a reason.
I wanted to go back to one thing, and
Yeah.
we can wrap it up with this. I was thinking about ordinary time, and you were talking about green. And I was thinking, okay, green to me means growth. And ordinary time is a time when you're certainly learning and you're going through a process, and that process could certainly mean a lot of growth or regrowth, not unlike
Correct.
what's going on right now with spring. You know, it goes dormant and then it comes back to life.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm going to apply the color green to the ordinary season because that is going to be forever and a day now my growth period.
Oh, I think that's great. I'm glad you have a meaning for it.
Well, therefore, you can use it if you'd like.
By all means.
I will share that one with you, and you can say,
I am no expert, but I'll say it anyway.
well, yeah, that's right. You can say you got a tip from a guy
That's right.
who's pretty good about this
A special
stuff.
guy, like you have a guy that does the plumbing, a
Yeah,
guy that
that's
does
right.
a guy that does liturgy.
That's
So,
right, and a guy that cuts the lawn.
You
okay?
have both.
And luckily, he's not bothering us right now.
No, he's out there
Because
doing the dirt.
normally when we sit down to do these, in the background on occasion, you will hear the sound of that.
Oh no, today is peaceful.
Well,
It's green,
peace be with you, my friend.
and with your spirit.
We look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert. See you next time.
I look forward to it. Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.